So we still got people coming in, but luckily this is being recorded and we're going to go through all of that stuff. Really excited today for a couple of different reasons, not only the topics that we're going to go over, but some new and exciting announcements from Agile Fleet here. So last week or last month, if you remember, we talked about change management, I guess you could say, right? We're just noticing with everything that's going on in the political environment, as well as just the environment, right? Noticing that there's a lot of people getting to that retirement age. And so we're having a lot of people from the fleet space retire, move, go on to their next careers. And with that, there's a lot of knowledge that leaves with them. So we wanted to talk a little bit about some of that change management. On top of that, I think everybody's aware here in the US with everything that's been going on politically, there's a lot of change when it comes to the way that Doge and others are looking at the way that we're spending our funds. And at Agile Fleet, we work with a lot of amazing people within the federal, state and municipal government space. And there's some changes there, right? So some people are saying, hey, this may not be the right fit for me moving forward. So they're changing. So that kind of sparked our conversation for last Workshop Wednesday and kind of brought us into this because Kathy asked the question, how many people out there have accountability charts or have started accountability charts or would like to look into accountability charts? And I think for a lot of people, I said, hey, let's go down that avenue. Let's look, let's research it, let's review it. And so what we've done is we've put together the high level thinking of it, as well as some examples. And we'll talk about this all the way through it. A lot of this is for you to consume, digest, and understand. And then again, deploy it out in the fields within your unique environments, and see how this helps you accomplish the goals that you have, whether it's just fleet in general, fleet operationally, but also to the people that you work with and you serve. So we're really excited to have you here. For those that are joining us for the first time today, it is Workshop Wednesday, and this is our knowledge series. It's our monthly knowledge series. We have the webinar scheduled from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern time. And we'll always ask for this now, in the middle, and at the end. Your feedback is greatly important to us. And thanks to everybody for their feedback following or during the last Workshop Wednesday. Because of that, we're having this conversation. Hopefully, some of the things that we're going to talk about today, you'll have some thoughts and share those thoughts within the chat so that we can further develop on what we're doing here kind of with the Workshop Wednesday series. And then again, there's going to be a QR code that we're going to pop up. We'd love for you to take out your camera phones, use that QR code to provide any feedback, not only for Workshop Wednesday, but just how your experience is as a customer with Agile Fleet. So before we begin, just a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. Your mic is going to be muted during the entire webinar. Don't worry, there's going to be a way for you to interact with us. And then this recording that we do have, it's going to be available on our YouTube channel. And then a copy of the slides will also be shared with you within 1 to 2 business days. And hopefully you're going to really like these slides because there's a lot of content into it. And hopefully you feel it's going to be valuable for your organization. And as a reminder, although you are going to have your mic muted, that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. May mean that we don't want to hear from your dog that might be barking in the background. But if you do want to interact with us, up in Teams, there is this chat icon. Go ahead and select it. It's going to bring you over to the meeting chat. And what we'll ask you to do is, because most of the time we don't see who you are or what organization you're with, If you could put your first name and the organization you're with, and then follow up with your question or your comment, that's going to help us not only address you here, but if for some reason we don't have time and we need to, end the meeting, we can follow up with you. So those are the housekeeping rules. I'm really excited, not only because I get a chance to work with our customers, and our customers are amazing. You all are doing amazing stuff. Kathy and I always talk about it. We have the most amazing jobs, getting the opportunity to be feet on the ground and visit with you. But we also have, for some, a new face, maybe a familiar face, Kristen Sonderman. And Kristen, I'm going to catch you a little bit off guard, but do you mind doing an introduction of who you are to our wonderful customers?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Kristen Sonderman. I am 7 days in at Agile Fleet, but I do have over 15 years of fleet experience. I've been on the within fleet management several years on the fleet leasing side, and then most recently at Texas State Technical College as their fleet manager, and a previous user and client of Fleet Commander. And so I'm really excited about this opportunity to transition over and work with Agile Fleet and work with all of you guys.
Awesome. And not to make you even more embarrassed, but just to get you to know you a little bit more personally, how about your favorite ice cream and your dream job when you were a kid?
Oh,
Like what you
man.
wanted to be. Like for me, it was baseball player. It didn't work out, obviously. So
I think growing up, most of the time, like I wanted to be a teacher. That was pretty much what I wanted to do. So, so that kind of correlates to what I'm doing within fleet management, partnering and working and educating people on the tools and resources that they have available to them. And then I think my favorite ice cream, I'm more of a sherbet fan. Like I like raspberry sherbet. Um, yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Mint chocolate chip. Mint chocolate chip. I'm one of those guys. I think a lot of people either love it or hate it, but I'm in the love part there. Well, welcome aboard. We're really excited to have Kristen. Not only is she a wonderful person to work with, but also brings a lot of experience as a fleet manager and then just in the fleet management space in general. And so a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today, she's going to provide a lot of anecdotes as to how she's not only seen some of these principles work with throughout fleets, but also the fleets that she's led over time as well. So today we're going to get into understanding accountability charts. I hope some of this stuff conceptually isn't going to be too dry. We'll try to keep it as much upbeat, but we want to get into some of the foundation as to how we derive some of this. We're going to talk a little bit about team efficiency through cross training, and you'll see how these accountability charts, once you get them up and running through the 4 levels that we're talking about here, we'll get into kind of like a 5th level, but that'll be a little bit later, teaser for more to come. And then just more optimizing your fleet operations as it pertains to Agile Fleet and Motor Pool, as well as a lot of these principles we're going to talk about, you can take back with you and apply it not only to Agile Fleet, but all the other technologies that you work with. I think this is a good exercise for all of that. So understanding the accountability charts and where they come from. So, we're going to give a little bit of a shout out to the entrepreneurial operating system. That's where the foundation of this comes from, right? We're not here to sell you on EOS, but I want to give you kind of a background in the thought process behind this, just so it makes a little bit more sense of things that we're looking at and what we're not looking at, as well as the way that we've kind of adopted it. It's for an organization as a whole, but we're kind of adopting it into your realm as a fleet manager. And hopefully you liked some of the things that we've been able to do. But this is, no different than there's a lot of different manager or managerial principles or I guess theologies out there. whether it's the 4 disciplines of execution from Stephen Covey, or there's Rockefeller habits. I've heard of scaling up, OKRs. So a lot of this is going to be very similar. For those that are in, right, we're going to reference some things from some of the people that are well in, I guess, integrated when it comes to EOS. Gino Wickman, he says that EOS is the way a company organizes its human energy. And we wanted to take that and now apply it into fleet. And to elaborate a little bit more on that, it's the way people in organizations, they meet, solve problems, plan, prioritize, follow processes, communicate, measure, structure, clarify roles, lead and manage. So we're going to take something pretty foundational, and you'll see how it will branch out to kind of covering a lot of these different principles or these functionalities of business in general. And to put it really, really simply, right, we're getting everybody on the same page. We're taking a step back, we're looking at our resources, and we're trying to get everybody on the same page so that we know who's doing what, who's responsible for what, and who reports to whom. So the reporting stuff is going to be a little bit more organizational, and we'll get into that as we get a little bit further into the principles here. But what I really like is, in looking and thinking about accountability charts, is it's more than just showing structure, right? It clarifies roles and responsibilities so that everybody in the organization knows what's going on. And a lot of the times what it'll do is it'll eliminate like multiple or often confusing reporting lines between managers and employees, and establishes that clear ownership and accountability for everybody getting stuff done. And I think in every organization, no matter if you're the most perfect run organization, there's always going to be situations where it's going to be who's on first, what's on second, if you know that skit, right? People pointing at other people. So it's not going to eliminate this completely, but hopefully it's going to minimize this. So our results, right? Think of this as, we have this giant puzzle, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to sort all of the pieces. I like to do, different sections that look like each other. A lot of people like to start with the edges. Everybody does stuff a little bit differently. But what we're trying to accomplish after all is said and done is first, we want to make sure that with these accountability charts, we're identifying all the available seats within the organization, right? And this is going to help us understand true headcount. And we understand that not, it's fleet. A lot of the times you're run on shoestring budgets and shoestring capacity. And so just because you may have all of these different seats doesn't mean there can't be overlap. But it'll also give you an opportunity to say, we have Anna here, and if we were truly looking within the organization, she's wearing 3 different hats, right? And so how do we make sure that Anna gets the recognition that she deserves within our organization, right? So that's going to help out with this as well. It's going to, again, clarify the roles and responsibilities, making sure that everybody's accountable, create those clear reporting lines, right? We'll talk a little bit about those, but we'll get into that a little bit more as we get into maybe more motor pool playbook. It's going to help us facilitate efficient decision-making and problem solving. And I think this is going to be huge, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, is when you understand a lot of this, it helps get 80% of what you truly do, put it into a manageable form, right? So that you can focus on the other 20%, the anomalies, because those are going to take special attention. But for the everyday things, we want to make sure that we're able, within our roles, to make quick and efficient decisions and problem solve. And then we want to make sure we know who to work with to get things done, and then just enable communication and flow. So overall, that's accountability charts. That's what we're trying to accomplish today. And again, you're going to have these slides, so don't feel the need to write all of this down. But that's the overarching theme here. I did love this quote, again, kind of going back to those that implement EOS. Mike Patton, he's been working with EOS for 17 years. And he's like their lead implementer over there. But basically, right, I'll just read this out. I've seen dozens of teams, hundreds of leaders, thousands of employees use this simple tool that we're going to talk about today to get more of the right stuff done because they'd replaced assumptions, murkiness, and complexity with clarity and simplicity. But I always been focused on the importance of defining the things for which people are accountable for. Last week, it dawned on me that the real value of an accountability chart might be defining the things for which people are not accountable. So hopefully you'll be able to see that and find that. And again, this is a process. You're not going to walk out of here in 60 minutes and say, hey, we've got this figured out. We exercise this over here at Agile Fleet, and we don't have all this figured out, but we try to do things each and every day to get better and better. So creating the accountability charts, right? So again, we're taking this as if we were doing this for an entire organization, and we're kind of compartmentalizing it to our fleet. And so in EOS, there's this visionary. They're the person that has a lot of ideas. They're more of the strategic thinker. They're also reporting to maybe the president of the organization, right? They're helping you connect the dots between leadership and what's going on. But we're not going to focus about them today. The visionary is important because a lot of the times all the reporting that you need to do to report up to leadership, it comes from them. A lot of the thought leadership comes from them, but where you're probably most of our customers that we work with, they sit within this integrator role, right? And the integrator is the person that is the glue for the department, the organization. They hold everything together. And when you look at the individual, we're going to talk about functions and roles, right? Right now, we're kind of keeping it high level as to overall, based off of what we know a fleet manager is, what is their primary function or role to make sure that everything gets done and that we're fulfilling the organization's goal or the organization's goal. So first, right, your fleet manager, your overall accountability for the fleet performance, cost management, compliance, and strategic direction. You're aligning the team with the organizational goals, and you're overseeing smooth cross-department coordination. On top of that, it probably needs a bullet point in and of itself is you take all of this information and then you disseminate it throughout the organization, right? You pull in other players throughout other organizations. All of the things for the fleet kind of flow through you. And now then you start pulling in other departments, like IT, like finance. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But overall, this is kind of what the fleet manager role within an accountability chart is. And again, this can be augmented. We're kind of thinking high level based off of most of our customers. So now we're going to go dive into kind of the level 2 core functions, right? So we have your leadership, and now we're going to get into core functions. And when we talk about core functions, what are the 3 overarching themes of fleet, right? What are the overall functions? We don't want tons and tons of them. You'll see how these 3 can break out, right, and branch out. But from what Kristen and I and some of the conversations that we had right? Fleet kind of boils into three things. You've got your operations and logistics, right? Where ultimately you're ensuring in this kind of category or bucket, we're ensuring vehicle availability and efficient use, right? A lot of things that we do in motor pool. And then also managing, dispatching, scheduling, driver coordinating, and routing. So again, think high level, and this is going to branch out, and you'll see how it starts to branch out to really creating clear accountability. So this is, let's think high level of what the primary functions, core functions of your fleet are. Right, and then you get into the second bucket of the core functions. We believe this to be maintenance and compliance, right? Again, high level, you're responsible for preventative maintenance, repairs, and vehicle safety, right? And even though you might not be running that fleet maintenance shop, right, you might be responsible for outsourcing a lot of that stuff. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. The other portion of it is making sure that you're compliant with DOT, FMCSA regulations, right? There's a lot of people in different various fleets that they have grants, right? And in order to stay eligible or have that grant funding and money, they have to remain compliant, right? So you're overseeing that. And then there's emissions and licensing. So in that bucket would be our maintenance and compliance. And then the third core function of fleet, right? We could kind of dive it into this managing fleet budgets, procurement, fuel expenses, and the financial reporting. And then overseeing the contracts, the insurance, the lease agreements, acquisition and disposal. And so you can see, and you're probably thinking, I would assume that a lot of people are thinking, wow, we have those core functions, but they're kind of jumbled, or they're coexisting in different places. And that's okay if that's your fleet, right? Again, this is more of overall for a general fleet. You knew nothing about fleet, or you were just a general fleet supervisor. This is how we get those core functions together. All right. And again, I know we're talking a lot. If you have any questions or you see anything that you want us to elaborate a little bit more on, or you see, hey, we should probably, because we want this to be kind of a living, breathing document for our customers. If you see something, you're like, hey, I would think that we potentially add something here, feel free to add that message. Whether it's now or even afterwards, you want to reach out to us. We would love to collaborate a little bit more and kind of get a playbook, right, for fleet managers, so that they can manage their motor pool more efficiently. And then as there is that change management, this is left behind so that the next person that takes it can take it and run with it. So now that we've got our core functions, we're going to really dive into this level 3 functionality, right? So we're making our way to more of the nitty gritty. So we've got the functions. What are the key roles within those functions? So in thinking of the operations and logistics, more than likely you're going to have operations supervisor duties, right? And again, we're saying these might be individual seats, but because you may not have budget or you might not have the resources, this can be just a category, right? So your operations supervisor, they're going to probably do the managing of dispatching. They'll do vehicle assignments. They'll do driver support, right? And that might be helping with the maintenance plan, fuel card assignment, right? So they might not be opening the fuel cards, but they might be helping assigning the fuel cards. And that's where there's going to be some intersection, and we're going to get into some fine details, and that's okay. This is for you to kind of take the step back and look at the pieces and see where they all fit. The next role, right, would be more of a fleet coordinator. So you're overseeing daily vehicle dispatching, trip planning, and driver communication. And then finally, we got this fleet analyst. Within the operations and logistics, you're monitoring vehicle utilization, fuel usage, and operational efficiency. So Christian, anything that we've gone over that kind of you're thinking, oh man, within my fleet, I remember this, or this really resonates?
Yeah, just as we're going through this, something I like to keep in mind with this is that, we're talking about responsibilities, not necessarily job titles. And so as we're going through these, you see these three titles here, but the job titles and departments may have responsibilities across functions, and you may pull in folks that aren't directly in the fleet but department structure at all as you're going through any of this. And one of the examples that I like to think of when I'm looking at this, and we'll get into the other two areas too, but if you look at the motor pool use example, you're going to have employees outside of fleet are going to be our users and requesters. They're going to be submitting the requests, driving the vehicles, and responsible for reporting things like mileage, fuel levels, and vehicle condition before and after a trip. Then you do have your fleet coordinators that are assigning vehicles, adjusting reservations, possibly dispatching out and back in, and providing accurate documentation for the vehicles. And then you may even have department admins dispatching, department supervisors approving the trip, and then on the procurement side, you're bringing in procurement as well. So we're not necessarily talking about job titles in this. We're talking about roles and responsibilities, and your titles may fall in several of these areas.
And what's worth mentioning is Chris and I, when we were going through and we were putting a lot of this together, there was a lot of healthy debate, right? In was rightfully wrong, right? So we were talking about operations supervisor and fleet coordinator and some of the roles, and the way that I saw it, I was like, Kristen, doesn't this need to belong here, right? And Kristen just said, no, the way I see it, this is what I think this means, and this is what this role or responsibility is supposed to be. And after she shared her opinion, I was like, yeah, you're right, right? So get with your fleet people, and we encourage that healthy debate of this is how I see it. No, this is how I see it, because again, right, it's really clarifying the communication and trying to provide as much transparency as possible as to what roles and responsibilities people hold.
And each fleet's going to be different too. So what we have outlined on here may translate a little bit differently at your agency. You may have different requirements or different goals that you're trying to achieve within your fleet that another agency may not be trying to accomplish. And so that may have an effect on what your roles and functions look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. If you're a university fleet, you're going to be a little bit different than a utility fleet. So keep this in mind. I hope this is a good framework, and then you can build upon this. I think a lot of the times what we all need is kind of that framework to say, okay, I kind of got this, right? Hopefully these are the training wheels for you to go and ride the bike out there. With maintenance and compliance, right, you'll have a key role of maintenance supervising, where you'll manage in-house mechanics and external repair vendors. Again, we've got internal, external. You might have a combination of both, right? And those responsibilities might be kind of shared, or they might be given to different people within the organization. Somebody does in-house, whereas the outhouse is, or the outside vendors, outhouse is a porta potty, but the outside vendors, right, are managed by somebody different within the organization, and that's okay. Mechanics and technicians, right? We kind of use those interchangeably, but those are the people performing the preventative maintenance and repairs. And your compliance coordinators, right? Your licensing, your DOT compliance, any type of compliance related to fleet and regulatory reporting. Now, diving into finance and administration, right? Getting into the fleet procurement specialist, right? The person that oversees or the people that oversee the vehicle acquisitions, the leases, the vendor contracts, those who track fuel and expenses, right? So costs, maintenance expenses, financial metrics. And so you'll see how this is a beautiful intersection and where different roles and responsibilities may lie in different departments, and how you'll have to get that clear delineation, right? So we have the operations and logistics where they're managing the supervisors, whereas when those costs and repairs occur, right, the financial side of it goes to more of your expense analyst, right, or those tracking the expenses. And then your fleet administrator, the person that manages the fleet, does a lot of the documentation, right, the different reporting, the driver records. So again, different key roles that we have, different functions, and then the key roles within those functions. That's where we're coming to right here. So we've got our management, right, and then we go into, it could be a little bit more than three, but we try to keep it to what are the three key functions of your fleet, and then you start getting into the key roles within those functions. So a simplified accountability chart might look like this, right? So we've got our division leader, and our fleet manager reports to that division leader. And then underneath that fleet manager, we've got a person that owns the role of operations and logistics. We've got a person that owns maintenance and compliance. And then we've got another person that owns finance and administration, right? Or you don't have three resources. And so you might split that down the middle, and you have somebody that's doing operations, logistics, and maintenance, and then you slide compliance over. So hopefully you can see the flexibility here. We're not trying to pigeonhole you at all. And if you're one that has amazing funding and you've just got everybody available for the right seats, your organization might look like this, right? So you've got the same structure, but then you, instead of just those functions, you have roles within those functions that you can actually assign people to. And again, there can be some overlap here, but these are, in general, most of what we would see as fleet responsibilities, fleet roles, and functionality.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to remember here is to make sure you're thinking about what responsibilities need to be accomplished, who's responsible for them, and then who the backup should be for those responsibilities. So once you get to this point, outlining and mapping what that looks like. And then if you think about this in the context of Fleet Commander and your other solution providers, if I'm the fleet coordinator, what are my responsibilities in these functions, and how do I carry them out?
Yeah. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper, right, into this. And Kristen just hit it on the head. You think about the functions and how it relates to Fleet Commander, right? We might have a fleet operations and logistics person that is responsible for our key management, right? But then we also have somebody that's in the fleet maintenance and compliance that's actually managing the maintenance within Fleet Commander, right? So even though they have different roles, they have responsibilities within Fleet Commander, and you can do this with all of your technologies, right? Is kind of look at, okay, now here's our functions, here's our roles. Now let's look at the different technologies that we have and what's our roles and responsibilities within that, right? We're just focusing on Fleet Commander. And then your finance person, right, that comes in here and they're looking at expenses. Hey, I'm going to manage all of the fuel. But then if you get even more elaborate, right, not everything kind of fits within the beautiful structure, right? You might have your fleet operations and logistics. You have a fleet coordinator that is over helping a lot of the drivers, because those are your users, right, on a day in and day out basis. But then your fleet compliance person might be over those drivers and working with HR to make sure that they have the appropriate clearances, right? Same thing goes with the compliance coordinator. They might come down here and say, hey, we're in Fleet Commander, but we're going to make sure that we're introducing and implementing the policy, right? And Chris and I have been working with a couple of fleet managers, fleet coordinators on how to do that, right? Do different iterations and introducing that policy and making sure that drivers are not only accepting the policy once, but they're doing it on a regular basis. And as you introduce new things, how that gets communicated to your drivers, and then we get documentation about that, right? The same thing for fleet finance. You might have the fleet administrator that's coming in here and looking at the different analytics, right, that we need to report on for to make sure that our fleet is running efficiently and that we're getting all the data and the business intelligence to our fleet manager as well as our division leader or our VP. So where you will go from here is you'll now start to then get down into the nitty gritty. And this is more playbook, what I would define as, but now you're getting into level 4, right? So we had our level 1, our level 2, our level 3, and now our level 4 is, and we kind of focused primarily within Fleet Commander, but we have a monster list of just different responsibilities, right? And so what you would do is start listing out responsibilities that you have on a day in and day out basis, and within those different functions and roles, right? So for Fleet Commander, who's got the approvals, right? Who's doing the scheduling? Are we doing automatic scheduling, or are you as the fleet manager or as the fleet coordinator having to do that scheduling? Are you doing physical, right? Not all of our customers at all locations have key boxes and kiosks. Who's doing physical key pickup and return? And you'll notice as we go through all of these, and we're not going to talk about all of them in the long laundry list, but this hopefully gives you kind of a basis for what you now should do after you do that. Is you're going to see, based off of the role of, right, our operations supervisor, is this a primary functionality? Is this a primary role, responsibility level for them? Or is this secondary? Is this tertiary, right? Is this the third? They're third in line for this. Another thing that you can do as you start going through this is add a column to the right, and work with maybe your documentations, your HR, or just maybe internally, and do a checklist of, do we have an SOP for this, right? Or do we have the training available for approvals, right? And it could be you personally do it, right? We have some amazing creative customers that have their own videos for how you check out a vehicle and the policy of renting those vehicles. And then we have others that just say, hey, you know what, Fleet Commander, over an FC drive, what you have is good for us. What's on YouTube is good for us. And so you might just say, we have a Fleet Commander link, and that's going to be our training there. So this is now where you get into some of the nitty gritty and you start to build on branching out into really identifying who has what their responsibility level is, and do you have the resources available as far as training and standard operating procedures. And from this, what's really good, right, is now you take this home and you start looking at this with your team. When you identify who's primary and who's secondary, you can then start getting into, okay, well, what potentially overlaps, what seems similar, um, and what can we do about cross training, right? And so it'll really help you identify who needs to be cross trained on what, as you identify if they're first in line, second in line, third in line. And Kristen will talk a little bit about some of the cross training benefits, in general, as well as some of the things that she's seen within the organization she has worked at. So you just tell me when to hit the next button, Kristen.
All right. Thank you, sir. So when we're talking about cross training, we're talking about um, this is referring to employees learning skills and tasks outside of their primary roles. And this practice can offer a range of benefits for both individuals and the organization. Some examples and key advantages of cross training we're going to list here. So the first one is increased flexibility and efficiency. When you're cross training and you're increasing this flexibility, what it's doing is you're providing role flexibility. Employees who are cross trained can step into different roles or tasks as needed, helping to ensure work continues smoothly, even if someone is absent or overwhelmed. And this flexibility enhances the overall efficiency of a team or a department. And then it also provides workload distribution. So during busy periods, if you've got employees that are cross-trained and can handle different responsibilities, they are able to easily, alleviate the burden on others and help prevent bottlenecks. So if you've got an accident that happens in one campus and your fleet coordinator is dealing with the paperwork and the processes that might need to be handled immediately at that sudden unplanned situation, you've got the backup person who can step in and help out with key distribution or driver questions when it comes to reservations. So it provides that increased flexibility and efficiency. The second bullet point that we have here.
Kristen, I love how you identified just somebody being overwhelmed, and I see that a lot, right? And
Yeah.
it happens I think in everybody's line of work, right? Where you're just overwhelmed, whether it's because of the work in general or the personal things that are going on in your life, because you're human beings, right? And sometimes you can just be overwhelmed, and having people on your team that know a little bit about what you do, so you're not just a silo, stepping in and saying, hey, I can't do everything, but I can potentially help out here. That plays huge with just human identity, as well as overall morale of the organization. So I loved how you pointed that out.
Thank you. The second bullet point for cross training is improved collaboration and communication. So by cross training, you're encouraging better communication among team members, since employees gain a deeper understanding of each other's tasks. And this can lead to stronger teamwork, clearer communication, and a more cohesive work environment. It also helps create a more collaborative atmosphere, as your employees are more likely to support each other when they know the ins and outs of the different roles. The third reason for cross training or benefit is enhanced problem solving. When our employees have a broader knowledge base and understand how different parts of the organization function, they're better equipped to identify solutions to problems that might span across different areas. And cross-trained employees can offer new perspectives and come up with innovative ways to improve processes, workflows, or solve issues. Our fourth bullet point on this is employee growth and development. So, we've talked a lot about succession plans and all of that stuff. Cross training ties right into that. By cross training your employees, you're allowing them to gain new skills and experiences. It's fostering career development and personal growth, and it makes workers feel more valued, and then can lead to greater job satisfaction and motivation. It can also open up new career paths for employees who want to broaden their expertise or move into different roles within the organization. And I think you can even accomplish the growth and development with the cross training just within the resources and the tools that you're using too. Focusing on maybe subject matter experts, or where is the area within your division that maybe you need a little bit of deeper knowledge base, and that goes into that growth and development piece too. The fifth bullet point is improved retention and job satisfaction. Offering cross training can improve employee retention because employees often appreciate having a variety of skills and challenges, and it'll keep them engaged and make them feel invested in their roles. It also helps prevent burnout, as employees are likely to feel stagnant or bored when they have the chance to they don't feel stagnant or bored when they have the chance to diversify their skills and learn new things. The sixth bullet point is continuity of operations. It ensures that ensures that if an employee leaves, takes time off, or is unavailable for any reason, others can easily take over their responsibilities without a significant impact on productivity. And it also enhances continuity in the organization, as no one person becomes a bottleneck for critical tasks or projects. And I think that one's really important because, we want our employees to have work-life balance. We want them to feel secure in being able to go on vacation or take a sick day and know that if they're not there, the same level of customer service that they would be expecting themselves to provide, that their team is able to provide too. They don't have to worry that when they come back, they're going to have, a week's worth of stuff that they have to get caught up on. Probably a little bit of stuff, but not a week's worth of stuff to get caught up on. And people are taken care of while you're gone.
And something to keep in mind, and I'm saying this out of love, right? Because we have many amazing fleet managers. In cross training, also think about delegating, right? There's so many fleet managers that I meet and I get a chance to talk to, whether they're customers or not customers, and it's so darn hard for them to walk away from their operations, and it's because they're so critical within that operation that they just can't, right? They feel like they can't. And so for your own health, your own sanity, see what you could do to delegate and cross train so that you can step out. And I've seen for most fleet managers, when they do that, it just increases that overall respect and admiration that their employees have for them. Because they want, I think a lot of them are like, man, this person does such a great job. They need to go on vacation. I wish I could do more to help them. So think about that. If you are the fleet manager or the one that's owning a lot of these responsibilities, this can also be applied with delegating as well.
Yeah. And I think that also ties into the fleet manager's growth and development. If you're delegating these tasks, cross-training your employees on some of the tasks that you're responsible for, that's going to free up some time and potential for you to work on your own growth and development within your own organization too. And I think that's just as important on this cross-training piece. Okay, so the eighth bullet point is agility in adapting to change. Organizations that cross-train employees are better positioned to adapt quickly to changes in the business environment. Whether it's taking on new projects, implementing new technologies, or shifting priorities, cross-trained teams can pivot more easily. And I think we live this so much in the fleet environment. I mean, things change so quickly and move so fast. I feel like you're pivoting weekly sometimes when it comes to fleet management and what's the priority, the importance, and being able to leverage your team to be able to do that makes you more agile and easier to change within that environment.
Absolutely. So some things to consider, right? Going into this direction of not only, again, we're creating these accountability charts again, and then thinking about delegating / cross training. There's going to be a lot that's out of your control, but don't forget about these individuals. I think a lot of the times when people think about their motor pool management, drivers, what is their role, right, in making you successful? What are the data points that they need to collect? They need to be trained on, right? And they report probably to department supervisors, right? We work with a lot of university fleets, and those supervisors may have students that are taking out the vehicles, right? Are they training their drivers enough to make sure that you're having the data on the back end to do what you need to do to make those executive decisions. So make sure you think about some of those roles in the process as well. IT, right? It's huge. This is technology. We're dealing with stuff that's on premise in the cloud. How does it impact or affect IT? And what we don't want you to do is we don't want you to think about all of this right now. I think there's a lot of people can get overwhelmed. So start with just your core, your first level, your second level, get into your third level. And when you come to the fourth level, this is some of the stuff that you want to think about, right? Finance, legal, HR. And so,
Todd, we forgot to add your vendors on this list when we were putting it together.
Yes, absolutely, vendors. And so the one thing for those that are still there, hopefully from what we talked about, last month we talked about, the change management, and you said, hey, let's look into these accountabilities. If you could in the chat, if this is kind of what you were looking for and it's hitting the mark, if you can just type in a 1, and if this is kind of not really the road or path that you were thinking that we should be going down, you can go ahead and type in a 2. And one of the reasons I'm asking you is because we think that there's a play on top of this, right? Where we get into more of a playbook style that goes into the nitty gritty of these things, and having people like Kathy, Kristen, we have John Ruthschild, we have Steve Minter, Helen Lagerblade, all of these people that have so much fleet management experience, getting more into a motor pool playbook stemming off of this. We'd like to go in that direction if you think it would be beneficial. If not, again, we don't want to waste your time. So that's, I think the other thing that we'd like to ask is, do you think that going deeper into more of a playbook would be beneficial for Workshop Wednesdays? And you can put a yes or a no for that one.
And I'll preface that with, as Todd and I were working through this slide deck and what we were going to talk about, we found ourselves migrating more into the playbook and the nitty gritty of things, and we were getting kind of excited about it. So
very much so. and it's good. It's good that you brought that up, because there's a lot of distraction. There's a lot of distraction. We had to come back, and I think I have more of the squirrel mindset than Kristen does. So I start going down this path. She's like, so are we okay, but let's bring it back. And I'm like, oh yeah, let's bring it back. So it's going to happen, right? Just consider that.
Yeah, well, and I think the thing that excites me about the playbook, and Todd and I were talking about this today, is, when you're looking at fleet management, there's no way you can figure out and plan for 100% of everything that you're going to face every day. But when you're breaking down the time blocks in your day, about 80% of what you do is probably something that you've done before or you're going to face again. So how can we streamline those processes and record them, the ones that we do often, so that we can eliminate the extra decisions that we may need to be making during that moment? Kind of like that decision fatigue that can come in. If you don't have these things mapped out and you're talking about them or making those decisions every time it comes up, you're going to hit some decision fatigue going on there. But if you've put in a little bit of time on the front end to think through that process, and you know what the process is, you know who the point of contacts are, you've given your team the ownership to be able to make decisions in those processes, then it's just part of your routine. It's part of your pattern. You don't even have to think about it. You just do it. And then you can focus your energy on those weird 20% of the things that pop up that you're just like, you know what? It's always something new in fleet.
And where we want to get to, that's a perfect segue, Kristen, because you had brought up a perfect example of tires, right? And replacing tires and taking away some of that fatigue, so that what this ultimately will do with our this accountability chart is allow people to make quick decisions. And so the tire example was great. If you can just quickly go over that, how you dealt
So
with it.
when Todd and I were talking about things, the tire example that I used is just, we're all fleets are replacing tires, right? There's sets of tires that you're replacing, many sets throughout the year, depending on your fleet size. So it's not a unique situation per, time that you're replacing tires. And as a fleet manager, there's things that you should be considering. What's the age of the vehicle? What's the mileage of the vehicle? What are the condition of the tires? What are the circumstances that are going on? And, if it's a 5-year-old vehicle with 60, 70,000 miles on it, and the shop is telling you that your tread depth is, at 330 seconds, that's a no-brainer. You're replacing tires there. So why don't you outline your process for what that looks like? So when that comes across, your fleet coordinator is not emailing your fleet manager for an approval on an average price of tires that you're obviously going to replace. Then you can focus your time. You don't even have to worry about that, but you can focus your time on those situations where it's a 1-year-old vehicle with 10,000 miles on it, and the shop is telling you that your tread depth is higher on one side than on the other. Maybe there's something that we need to look at and put a little more time and energy into. That was the example I gave.
Yeah, no, it was a great example, and that's where we want to head a little bit more with the playbook, right, and how this helps in that aspect. I know we're coming up on time. If you have any questions, feel free to put them into the chat here. We'll try to get to them as much as we can. Again, teaser, we'd really like to go into maybe a motor pool playbook or a playbook for fleet in general that can be applied to other aspects of fleet. So more to come there. It sounded like, or looks like, a lot of people would be interested in just looking at that and developing it. And again, as you get these tools, we'd really love to, as we follow up with you as client success, hear how it's going, get some feedback on maybe what we need to add to this template. We would love that kind of feedback. As always, just quickly, thank you for your partnership. Thank you for being part of the Agile Fleet family. If there's anything you need, right, you have great resources. And Kathy, fortunately, Kathy is out on well-deserved PTO, but she is here and available. And then also Kristen is here and available. If you do need to get in touch with Kristen or Kathy, you can do that by going to these client success links here, or calling them, contacting our wonderful support team. I do want to mention, we'd love to see you at Command. These are some of the things that we could follow up with a lot at Command 2025, which is our user conference. It's going to be in Minnesota. Please let us know if you have any questions. You've probably received some email or link for you to sign up. We'd love to have you out there.
Yep, I want to see and meet everybody.
Yes, that would be great. Again, your resources for success. Sorry, I'm going through this a little quick. We went through a lot of materials, and that was my bad on the time management. But YouTube channel, our workshop Wednesday knowledge base, right? There's all the latest episodes, and then as you start to implement this stuff, it doesn't even have to be on accountability charts, but feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to share your success. We want our workshop Wednesdays to be more relevant. And so if you have things that you want to share with our customer base, we'd love to have you be a thought leader on workshop Wednesday, kind of like our good friends over at Cornell, who did a fantastic job in January. We are on social, and here is the QR code. Again, I apologize for going up on time, but thank you so much for being with us, and we'd love to hear your feedback.
Thank you very much, guys.